I'm Chris.
And I'm Chris.
And this is
Mike Fight. Let's get it on.
This is episode 3, Executive Orders. So, a lot has happened. What we're going to talk today, we're going to talk about the Biden administration and all his executive orders. That should be fun. Chris, I think there's been, 50?
I lost count. I have no idea.
So, here's the funny thing. So, just the other day, I was looking at, watching the TV, and a report came up. And the visual was very, very telling. I think it was within the first 48 hours, right? The first 48 hours, Joe Biden has signed 35 executive orders. 35 executive orders. No other president has done that. Actually, here it is. So let's go back. Let's go back for like the last 5 presidencies we're going to include. So back 4. So let's go to the Clinton era. So in the first 72 hours of Bill Clinton, when he became president, he signed 1. Okay, so Bill Clinton had signed 1 executive order in the first 3 days of his presidency. After Clinton was Bush, right? So Bush signed in his first 3 days 0. All right? 0. Then after Bush came President Obama. President Obama, in his first 3 days, again, 72 hours, he had signed 5.
Wow. It's a big jump.
5. So we go 1, 0, 5. Okay? Still one hand, though. That's still one hand, Chris. You got to understand. That's still one hand. Trump. Everyone hated Trump, right? The worst president ever. His first 3 days in office. Tell me, how many executive orders do you think he signed? Maybe it wasn't only 4 years ago. It was only 4 years ago.
I'd say like 3.
1.
Wow. I was way off.
1. First 3 days in office, President Trump signed 1 executive order.
It's a hell of a dictator.
Now we got Sleepy Joe Biden, right? Aptly named by former President Trump. First 3 days in office. Take a guess.
27.
Close. I'm not going to say no, but it was close. 19 executive orders signed in the first 3 days of this presidency.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, we're like a week in now, so I think at this point there's like 27 or 30 of them. So
I lost count at 35. I think there were 35 at one point. That's why I facetiously said 50, but I was not kind of kidding. I mean, he's actually signed a couple of more today, right?
Right.
These executive orders, for those who don't know, the executive order was a last-ditch effort for emergency power given to the president for emergency purposes only, right? It was meant as a way for the president to get things across in a timely fashion before Congress had an opportunity to present a bill and all that stuff, right? So that was the whole point of the executive order, okay? This is not any way in which it was intended. This is just beyond ridiculousness. The New York Times just called out Joe. The New York Times called him out. They said, ease up on the executive orders. When you have the New York Times saying, ease up, doesn't that like a bell go off in your head and say, wait, maybe I am using this too much?
Well, yeah, but you got to think of the New York Times. What's the New York Times? What is their reason for telling him that? They don't actually care whether or not he uses his executive orders. Every time one of these media outlets, these newspapers, send a message like that to the left, it's basically a wink and a nod. So he's telling Joe, hey, I don't care that you're doing this because you're my guy. But if other people who don't agree with what we're doing take a look at this, they're gonna see something completely different. Like you're being a dictator. You're not allowing Congress to, vote on these things. You're just taking it upon yourself to pass whatever agenda you want to pass, and you don't want to go through the proper channels. So the New York Times just giving Joe a little warning, like ease up on it because we don't want you to look bad. It's all about perception.
So it's all optics.
It's all about perception.
So it's all just optics.
Remember, the first year or two, if he even makes it that far, is purely to make sure that Joe Biden looks good. That's it. It's just look good. No matter what you do, they're going to perceive him as good old Uncle Joe, just doing what he's supposed to do to look out for everybody here. And clearly that's not it, because if you look at some of these executive orders, these were not things that he had to push within his first week or within his first 3 days.
None of these. And now you just mentioned something before where you brought up, if he lasts that long. I jokingly said when he was running and when he was first elected back in November when the election results came in, that I said he's not going to make it. And I was semi kind of kidding at that point, like what's the over under on how long Joe's going to last. Have you listened to him any of the sound clips of when he's actually signing some of these executive orders?
Yeah, well, they sound exactly like the way he sounded when he was giving press conferences and, having meetings and giving interviews on TV. The guy cannot formulate a proper sentence.
As the time goes on, because I'm sure, like, in the morning when he's just woken up and they've pumped him up with all these vitamins and probably some amphetamines or whatever they have him on, as the day goes on, he trails off. Like, he mumbles. He stumbles. He can't remember certain words, or even if he's reading something, he can't read it properly. It's actually really, really scary. And I'm saying to myself, this is a gentleman that's, 78 years old, okay?
Right.
He can't seem to last a certain time frame, like a certain time period, like maybe only half a day he can go. And as the day, this is what the American people, 80 million people voted.
Supposedly.
To have this gentleman run this country. And this is I'm not very big into conspiracy theories. However, it seems to me that the more I listen to this guy talk, right, and as he signs and he's trying to explain the executive order and like what it's meant to do and why he's doing it, it just sounds like he's laboring so much that I feel the administration and those who are with him and part of him, and maybe not necessarily him himself wholeheartedly, but all those around him are pushing this with executive orders, because they know that half of the stuff really won't pass or make law from Congress. I truly believe that. I do feel that there are some Democrats out there that would not support half of these measures that are out there, and that they are pushing Biden to make it law or to push it through these executive orders because A, they can't pass it, and B, he may not even make it through the first term, his first 4 years.
Well, that's what I think they prepared for. I mean, this goes back to when he was running, because the overall theme here is protecting Joe Biden. That's what the theme is. That's what their main goal for the next couple of years is going to be. And it goes back to when he was running, because even when he was running, you could tell when he was giving these interviews, when he was giving his press conferences, the man could not formulate a coherent sentence. And he goes up on a debate stage, and all of a sudden the guy can speak properly again. He's rattling off his speeches, his statistics, everything else. But you could see as the debates went on, in time, you could see him start to trail off. And you could see him starting to stutter again, exactly, and starting to lose his place in his thoughts. And this was all being seen before he even became president. But instead of calling it out, they attacked anybody who brought it to the public's attention, and they made excuses for him. Oh, it's just, he's a gaffer. Joe Biden's always been a gaffer. He's a gaff machine. Right, and they give examples of, from 20, 30 years ago where he made a mistake. But we're not talking about
20,
mistakes.
30 years ago.
But not even that, just mistakes like screwing up a date or pronouncing a word wrong. We're talking about a man who literally loses his place, not only in his own thoughts, but in a teleprompter. Like his brain, he's reading the teleprompter, but it's getting back to his brain so quickly that his brain can't keep up with the information. And by the time he's done processing what he just read, what he spoke is just a bunch of garble.
It reminds me of that interview he had with his wife, right? Just recently when he became president, or when he was just elected, was president-elect. Right, the doctor. She was lipping, mouthing to him because he had misspoken.
Yeah, and there was another one where he was reading from the teleprompter, and then the teleprompter went down, and he had to use his hand gesture to tell him to bring it back up because he stopped speaking. He couldn't formulate his own thought or remember what was written on it, and for a couple of seconds he was just lost, staring at the TV like.
That reminded me. That right there just reminded the fact that you just said that just reminded me. There was back to Bush when Bush was president. And Dana Perino, I don't know if you know who she is on Fox.
Yes.
The blonde. She was like his press secretary for a while. She, very, very intelligent woman, very smart. She told a story of when Bush was giving a speech, and the teleprompter went down, and he had to wing it. And I think Clinton did something very similar as well, where although the teleprompter went down, they had X amount of portion, and they just went with it, right? They just had to continue going. I don't see that happening at all with President Biden.
Hell no. No
I don't
way.
think President Biden can handle that. I don't think he knows. First of all, it takes a certain type of person to be on their feet, right? You have to be way with words. I think Bush was able to do it because he was a good debater. That was one of his strong points politically. Like if you had a political tool, I think one was that he was actually a very, very, very good debater. Clinton, very fast on his feet, like he could think very quickly. I think that was one of his strengths. I don't see any of those qualities in Joe Biden. I just don't. I think he's beyond where he may have been able to develop that. But to your point before, he has a history of this. But I think now the gaffes are gaffes, right? Gaffes are a misspeaking thing. And to your point, like you said, this isn't just misspeaking anymore. This is down now. I'm actually a little worried that my president, the leader of my country, may not make it. It may not have the mental capacity. Like before, everyone was just talking about it, making fun of him, like Sleepy Joe Biden. That's what Trump named him, right?
Right.
It doesn't even seem that way anymore. It seems like, you know what? There may be some cognitive issues going on with this guy.
Not there maybe. There definitely is. I mean, just calling him Sleepy Joe and making fun of him, yeah, you're trying to make a light of the situation because you don't genuinely want the guy to be, heading down a road like that. Where,
after all, this is the president, right? This is the leader of the free world.
But at the same time, you cannot ignore it. And you can't ignore it anymore, especially as the president, where, Nancy Pelosi talks about invoking the 25th Amendment against Trump strictly because she doesn't like what he has to say. And she uses, the mental, right? Mental health.
There, right? Mental health.
And he wasn't mentally capable of running this country. And that's a man who didn't need a teleprompter. That guy could think on his feet. He was traveling around the country.
He actually sounded worse sometimes when he was actually reading from a teleprompter.
Oh, he did, because he didn't want to read from a teleprompter. No. The guy always wanted to go off the top of his head like that. But you had him fighting Nancy Pelosi in the 25th Amendment, and here you have a man who, I mean, it's clear and obvious that there's something going on and that his mental capacity is just not there. He may still be coherent and knowing what's going on around him, but he's clearly working on a slower clock. And that is a very dangerous thing. And maybe that's why he's signing all these executive orders, because you know what? Let me get all this shit done now, because in a year or two, I may not even know what the hell I wrote.
I said that. Again, I'm not into conspiracy theory, but this seems more likely than not at this point. If for anyone who's listening, please just listen to the sound bites. Tell me I'm wrong. Put it in the comments section. Tell me I'm wrong, that he doesn't sound like he's laboring. He doesn't sound like he's having trouble speaking, remembering, just simply talking, trying to explain what it is he's signing, why he's signing it. again, he may know what he's signing, right? He knows I'm signing an executive order. I know it's on allowing men to play women's sports. So here I am. I'm going to sign this, and I'm going to try to explain on how it's a good thing. And he just can't say it properly. Mumbles, stumbles, sometimes mumbling so much that you can't understand a word. Like you could, I'm a president of equality for, what is this? It's scary. Forget about, all jokes aside, it's scary. And now you combine it with the fact that there are those in leadership in the Democratic Party that know that this is there, right? They knew this pre-election. They knew this was there, right? Why do you think they hid him over the summer? They hid him all summer, right? He wasn't anywhere to be seen, except for maybe the 5 rallies that he had, in which, 15 people showed up, right? That's all there was. And again, reading from a teleprompter, very scripted, right? Say this, Joe. Stand here, Joe. Look here, Joe. Okay? And even then, he's kind of screwed up. But again, it's Joe. I gaff a lot.
Exactly. You laugh it off like it's not a big deal.
This is becoming more than that now. Now he's actually won, right? He won. He's sitting in the Oval Office at the Resolute desk. He's signing pieces of paper that they feel cannot, I feel, in my opinion, subjectively think that they know they can't get half of this crap passed as law. So they're going to have this guy who they feel will not make it a full 4 years. Forget about 8 years. I feel they don't even think he's going to make it 4. Okay? And now they're having him sign all this stuff. Get it in now. Get it through now. Yeah. Put it down now. If anything, we'll let the courts, and the courts take forever. Right? So these things can be enacted or put in place. Some of them get on hold, right? His one with the immigration, the executive order on the immigration.
Right.
That one was in Texas, right? That the federal judge stopped that, which also, oddly enough, is what stopped Trump's executive order. It was the same. It's actually the same law. It's just for different reasons and different purposes. But the same law that stopped Trump is the same law that's stopping President Biden, right? That's our only hope with these executive orders.
Yeah.
Remember, the checks and balances still work out, but they have to work. Like, the judges can't just stop something. We need someone to bring the suit to the judge to say, look, this doesn't seem constitutional. We need you to review it.
Well, but that's a lawsuit that's brought on by the Texas AG, right? Was it Ken Paxton? Was one of them, and then the governor, Jim Abbott, right? Not Jim Abbott, Greg Abbott.
Greg.
Right? So...
It's all right. You got baseball on the brain.
I know.
Yankee.
Corey Kluber at the end of his career. Anyway, yeah, those are lawsuits, though, that they bring to the courts because it affects the continental United States. You're talking about opening up a border, stopping the construction of a wall. That's going to greatly affect the state of Texas, among other states.
So today's executive order, I think, was signed dealing with Obamacare, or the quote-unquote, air quotes, Affordable Care Act.
Right.
Which there was nothing affordable about it. Absolutely nothing. I'm sorry. People, look at the bill, okay? Look at the law. Look at it. There was nothing necessarily affordable about it. And guess what? The whole point of the Affordable Care Act was to get the, 30 million Americans onto health insurance, right? That was the goal. Guess what? There's still 30 million people without health insurance after President Obama left office, okay? The goal didn't work. And Rahm Emanuel, his brother, Rahm Emanuel was the mayor of Chicago, right?
Yep.
His brother was actually part of the think tank that came up with the Affordable Care Act. And they flat out came to say, yeah, we're going to have the individual mandate on this because there's no other way we're going to be able to afford it, right? So people had to pay. And that's the argument that the administration brought to the Supreme Court, if you remember.
Whether or not it was a tax.
Right. They, for years, this is not a tax, it is not a tax, it is not a tax. This isn't a tax, it's not a tax. They said it again, it's not a tax. But they bring it to the Supreme Court, And what do they say? It's a tax.
And who said it? John Roberts.
Well, he was the one that
Right.
agreed that, yes, because of that argument, and I remember this, it was because of that argument that this is a tax, the government has the right to tax the people,
Right.
right? That's the only, for that reason alone, he went along with it.
Right.
And I have a theory on that as well. I don't know how deep we want to go into that rabbit hole, but I feel that he did it on purpose. I feel that Roberts agreed with that because he knew what the optics were. He knew that this was something that was atrocious, and that it was being touted to the American people as not a tax, and that because he ruled specifically stating that the government has the right to tax people, that people were going to get outraged and that it was going to be imploded, right? Now, that was all done during President Obama's first term, right? The Affordable Care Act. I think it wasn't in his second term. It was his first term. So, again, this is what I feel. I feel Roberts was signaling that we're going to, maybe there will be a little uproar and that the American people would not reelect President Obama, because if you remember, after that, the Tea Party came in, right? And the Tea Party came and they revamped all of Congress, and that's when they lost power in the House of Representatives, right? The Tea Party. Then you had like Ted Cruz and all those other people, Rand Paul, come in. They were all Tea Party prospects and candidates, and they took the Senate and they took the House of Representatives, and now President Obama had to kind of work with both parties and stuff like that. But I'm telling you, I think he did it on purpose to get the light out, right? To show everyone, hey, they lied.
Well, if you want to look at the Affordable Care Act and you want to believe everything that they told you about it, the one thing you can look at to tell whether or not they were actually being truthful is the Congress men and women themselves. Were they exempt from getting the Affordable Care Act?
I think they were.
They were.
I think they were.
I'm pretty sure they wrote in the bill itself
Why
that
would
they
do
were
that?
allowed to keep their own insurance and that they would be exempt from that.
Why would the
from that
federal
insurance
government,
company.
people that work in the highest form of government for the country, they're the ones actually writing the bill?
Right. It's such a great bill. You're trying
It's
to convince people about it.
phenomenal.
Right. That they ran away from it themselves. That
They-
tells you
they
everything you
write
needed to know
themselves out.
about it.
Look at that. Right? They can write themselves out. Yeah, it's phenomenal. This is guys, this is great for you. You can have this. It is wonderful. Look what I've done for you. Oh, so you're going to join it? Nah, no way in hell. But it's great for you. Trust me. I wrote it just for you. But why don't you want it? Because I don't need it. I'm good. I'm good.
Because I have great insurance and I don't want your shitty Affordable Care Act insurance. That's why.
Yeah. So
That's
that was today's executive order. I jokingly mentioned before the executive order that's going to allow men to play in women's sports.
Yeah. Effectively getting rid of all female sports.
Like I don't understand. Like I saw a meme, and I know this is they float across the social media platforms like crazy. But I saw a meme of a jacked individual, a jacked guy, wearing a woman's sports bra and booty shorts, and said, "I'm here to try out for the volleyball team." Right? It's hysterical. It's absolutely hysterical, and it's funny. The famous line, "It's funny because it's true."
Yeah. And, you know, you said before, like, there's some of these executive orders he wanted to push through because they wouldn't support him.
Who the
in
hell would
Congress.
support that?
That's one of them where I think you're right. I think that there'd be enough sane people in Congress that they would not support a bill like that. Could you imagine? Do you remember in MMA, right? There was a fighter who was a man who transitioned to a woman.
Yes, that was only a couple of years ago, actually.
Right. Who was beating the hell
I don't know.
out of,
I don't know who it was. I don't
remember her name.
know
but
the names. But you're absolutely right.
beating the hell out of female fighters.
Destroyed. I think they took a lawsuit, right? There was a lawsuit to stop him or something.
I don't remember. I just remember the fight that I watched when she lost. It was to Ashley Evans.
Oh, so
Ashley Evans.
The individual did lose eventually?
Yeah, and she was able to beat her based on technique. That from what I saw, she was able to out technique her and beat her, but not before she destroyed a few female fighters before fighting her, and someone finally figured out a way to beat her. Could you imagine in any sport your daughter going up against something like that? Like, think about, like you said, volleyball, or softball.
Oh, softball.
Any one of these sports, soccer, where you have men and women are biologically different. It's a fact. You can argue all you want about it.
No,
you can put your feelings in there and think whatever you want.
I don't think that way. No, I'm not. What are you talking about?
Facts don't care about your feelings. Okay?
I don't
Men are built differently. They're bigger, they're stronger, they're more dense. It is what it is. Even the weakest male is still going to have a form of advantage.
I don't know. There's some pretty weak men, man. I'm just going to let you know. There's some pretty weak men out there.
There are.
There are some women that can definitely. I know there are probably women that can definitely kick my ass. I'll just say that. I'm not weak, but there are some women that can definitely kick my ass. But you're right.
Yeah, Fallon Fox is one of them.
Oh, is that?
She's the one.
She's the one?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And listen, I don't care about what you want to do with yourself. If you honestly believe that you are a gender other than the one that you were born with, then fine. You are a man. You're born a man. You think you're a woman. Fine. You're a woman. You want me to call you she? You want me to call you he? Fine. But you cannot enter into a sports arena and tell me that they don't have an advantage over their opponents.
President Biden said I can.
Yeah,
exactly. He signed the piece of paper that says.
And to think about who's telling you that you can. That guy, who can't speak correctly or come up with a coherent thought in his brain.
The leader of the free world said I can. I can do it.
That's ridiculous, and I can't. There's going to have to be lawsuits with that one. I can't imagine.
Oh, there already
the first time, the first sports game, whatever game it is, whatever sport it is, where someone who was born a man and transitions to a woman completely dominates that sport. What are you going to do?
So this brings up now, like I don't know if it specifically did this, but I may have read in the article that it's expanding into certain laws in schools, right? In where I believe teachers are not allowed, or nurses in schools are not allowed to report to the parents of a student who identifies differently. So right now, I think there's I don't know if it's a law or if it's a policy in like high schools where if a child goes to, or a kid, well, it may be even younger in grammar school, where if they go to the nurse and they identify or say that they identify as the opposite gender of what they are, that school worker is not allowed to call the parents and tell the parents. That to me is an atrocity. Okay? Regardless of whether I agree with my child's mental thought of what he or she thinks he or she is, I need to be told this, because if I'm unaware of this, I need to be told. There is no way you can tell me a 10-year-old has any idea of what that concept really means. No. Of gendered transitioning. I'm sorry. There's no way a 10-year-old understands that. Not one bit. Can a child know that or feel that there's something wrong with them? Yeah, all right. A kid gets sick. They said, I'm sick. There's something wrong with me. Yeah, okay. But again, I know I'm just saying, person's sick. But they can tell us that there's something wrong. There's no way they can equate that okay, I feel like a boy when they're a girl, or I feel like a girl when they're a boy. There's no way a 10-year-old can do that.
Yeah, well, it's also like if you see a boy playing with a Barbie doll, you let it go. Kid's playing with a
Right.
Barbie doll. It is what it is. The next week he could be playing with a truck. The next week he could be jump roping. Kids do things because they're fun or they're interesting or they're just curious.
Right.
And they do things and you let them do things and they figure out what it is that they enjoy, what it is that they
It is
like,
the mind.
how they feel. Exactly.
Absolutely.
But the problem right now is you have people out there that are taking their son and then shoving a Barbie doll in his hand and telling him, you do love Barbie dolls. You will play with Barbie dolls. From now on, this is what you're going to do. And God forbid that kid picks up a Lego or a Matchbox car.
Right.
And it's shit like that where you're forcing a kid now to accept your idea of what you think he or she should be.
Getting back now to the executive orders, there was one that you mentioned to me just before about equity, right? In the Pacific Islander, or
yeah, you're not allowed to call the Wuhan virus or the Chinese virus either of those names, which I just did.
So the COVID-19 virus, according to an executive order that was signed by President Biden, you are not allowed to associate that with any type of Pacific Islander or Asian descent. Correct?
Right.
So why was that done? Can anybody please write in the comments, why was that done?
More importantly, why did that have to be done in the first week of office? Is that really what's so
Chris,
important
that's vital.
on the global
Chris, it's
fucking
vital.
scale right now?
Don't you know that dozens and dozens of millions of Pacific Islanders and Asian people are on their knees crying?
Well, that's the thing.
Right now.
That's what they cite, that they don't want violence against
crying right now.
Chinese Asian Pacific Islander people in this country.
They're
Can you
crying
tell
right
me
now.
where the widespread...
If Joe Biden didn't sign that, they would have actually fallen on to the ground completely, crying their eyes off and possibly have died. That's why he had to sign it. I think that's what he mumbled as he was signing it.
But it's like, I don't understand. You can't cite me that many cases of violence against the Asian community in this country since January of 2020, specifically because of the coronavirus. There aren't just droves of people walking around the country seeing an Asian person on the street going, hey, fuck you, you're the reason why we have the coronavirus, and then punching that person in the face. Like, that shit is just not happening. And yet that's exactly the story that they're using to write stupid executive orders like this.
It's happening, Chris.
It's
You're in denial.
Listen, I'm sure there's one or two examples that maybe that did
there's
happen.
80 million people that's happening to right now.
But that shit is just not. It is not widespread, and that's what they're using to write laws like this into write executive orders like this, because they're trying to again work into your emotion. Where they're going to tell you that this is what's happening everywhere.
Throw
and people
out
going,
rational thought.
oh my God, I
Throw it
can't
out.
believe that. People are actually getting beat up because they're Asian and they're being blamed for the corona. And they're like, yeah, that's exactly what's happening. And then they hear this executive order come out and they go, oh my God, Joe Biden, again, just showing us what the hero that he is and the man that, Trump should have been. Look at him protecting all these, Asian Americans from being beaten down because of the coronavirus. It's like, it's fake. It's fake. It's not happening.
It's all like you touched on it perfectly. There's a philosophical difference, okay? You either want to think and utilize rational thought to get something across, or you want to just go through life feeling your way through. I feel this is the way things should be. I feel that this person likes me or dislikes me. I feel like this is the right way to go. Instead of actually looking at the freaking facts. Facts are being thrown out the door. Or they're basically being told to you that it's misinformation. Objectivity, facts, data. You can have a hunch, right? That's the whole thing of a hypothesis. It's a feeling, a gut feeling, a question, okay? But what is the data? Does the data support that feeling, or does it disprove it? I feel there is more evidence to disprove certain things than there are to support certain things. But that's the scientific method. They don't care about that anymore. It's all about, oh, how does little Joe feel? How does little Jamie feel?
Yeah, well, the idea of the Democratic Party is to feed off of your feelings, not facts. They don't want people who are going to use the scientific method to figure out whether or not what they're being told is actually true. They want people who are going to make a rash decision on the spot by attacking their feelings. Because when you work off someone's emotion or you work off someone's fear, right? So just going back to that last example again, where you actually tell people that this violence is happening and, you know, all these people are being attacked. People freak out and they get emotional about it and they're upset and they go, something needs to be done. And then Joe Biden steps in and goes, well, here you go, executive order, this is bad. And right away they're satisfied right then and there. Yes, satisfied. But they don't think about the long term or the consequences of that decision, because when you think with your emotion, you're not thinking long term. You're thinking instant gratification, instant satisfaction in the moment.
You know, people went against, they railed against Bush for doing that, right? They said he got in, he went in and he shot from the hip, right? Shot from the hip, and he went into Iraq and he was shooting from the hip with that decision, right? Based on 9/11. That was all based on 9/11. Shot from the hip. They railed against him for that.
Right.
Right? Using emotion. And now, all of a sudden, it's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
It's a wonder. Let's all use emotion and feelings. Let's forget about the freaking mind and how to rationally think something out.
No, it's you take the mind out, and what you have left is emotion. And emotion is a very powerful thing. But when used the wrong way, it can be a very dangerous tool. And that's where we have to be careful with the path that we're heading on right now.
Well, on that note, until next time, I'm Chris.
And I'm Chris. And this is where we drop the mic.